first thing our eyes noticed was the way sunlight fell unevenly across the cafe floor that morning. Golden in some places, cold and gray in others, like the room itself couldn't decide what it wanted to feel. And then he heard it, a careless laugh, a harmless joke. Or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. "My sister's prettier," she said, smiling like it didn't matter. And that was the exact moment everything changed. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways people heal each other without even realizing it, take a second to comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. You never know whose heart might need a story like this today. Our Eyes wasn't the kind of man people noticed first. He was the kind you remembered later. Early 30s, always dressed neatly but simply, with tired eyes that carried more stories than he ever told. Life had shaped him into someone who spoke less, observed more, and loved carefully. Ever since his wife passed away 3 years ago, the world had become something he moved through quietly, like a guest who didn't want to disturb anything. His daughter, Meher, was the only reason sunlight still meant something. Every morning, our Eyes would walk her to school, her tiny hand wrapped tightly around his, her endless chatter filling the silence he never knew how to break. She was 7, with curious eyes and a laugh that refused to let grief settle too deeply into their home. For her, he smiled. For her, he tried. And on that particular morning, after dropping Meher off, he stopped at a small cafe he had recently started visiting. It wasn't anything extraordinary, just a quiet place with soft music, warm tea, and a sense of calm he couldn't explain. But lately, something had been different. Someone had been different. Her name was Zymel. She wasn't the loud, attention-grabbing kind. In fact, she almost blended into the background. Simple clothes, tied-back hair, and a smile that seemed a little unsure of itself. But there was something about her presence. Something steady. Something real. She worked there part-time while helping her family manage their small tailoring shop next door. Our Eyes didn't realize when he started noticing her. Maybe it was the way she remembered his order without asking, or the way she always greeted him with a softness that felt genuine, not forced, not polite, just kind. And then there was her sister. Hania was everything Zymel wasn't. Confident, bold, effortlessly beautiful. She carried herself like someone who had always known she was admired. When she entered a room, people turned their heads. Conversations paused. Even the sunlight seemed to favor her. That morning, both sisters stood behind the counter, laughing about something our Eyes hadn't heard. Until he did. "My sister's prettier," Zymel said lightly, nudging Hania with a playful smile. It was a joke, a harmless one, the kind siblings make all the time. But something about it didn't feel harmless to our Eyes, because he saw the way Zymel said it, not with pride, not even with humor, but with something quieter, something practiced, like she had said it too many times before, like she had come to believe it. And before he could stop himself, before he could weigh the consequences of speaking, the words left him. "I was never looking at her." The cafe went still, not dramatically, not loudly, but in that subtle, almost fragile way silence falls when something real enters a room. Zymel blinked, caught off guard. Hania's smile faded slightly, confusion flickering across her face. And our Eyes, realizing what he had just said, felt a wave of uncertainty rise within him. He wasn't a man who spoke impulsively. He wasn't a man who made bold statements. But something about that moment had demanded honesty. And now there was no taking it back. The days that followed carried a strange tension, like a story waiting to unfold but unsure of its own direction. Our Eyes continued visiting the cafe, though more aware now, more careful. Zymel, on the other hand, seemed quieter around him, not distant but thoughtful, as if his words had unsettled something deep inside her. For years, Zymel had lived in the shadow of comparisons. Relatives, neighbors, even strangers had always pointed out Hania's beauty, Hania's confidence, Hania's presence. And Zymel had learned to agree, to laugh it off, to make it easier for everyone. It was simpler that way. But our Eyes' words had done something unexpected. They had disrupted that simplicity, because no one had ever said otherwise before. And now she found herself wondering, what if he meant it? Meanwhile, our Eyes struggled with his own thoughts. He hadn't intended to change anything. He hadn't planned to become part of someone else's story. But slowly, quietly, Zymel had started becoming part of his. He noticed the way she spoke gently to customers who were having a bad day, the way she stayed late to help her mother with sewing orders, the way she smiled at Meher when our eyes occasionally brought her along. And Meher noticed too. Children have a way of seeing truths adults overlook. One afternoon, as Meher sat in the cafe drawing with colored pencils, she looked up at our eyes with innocent certainty and said that Zymel smiled like her mother used to. The words hit harder than anything else, because for the first time in years, our eyes didn't feel the need to correct her. But life, as it always does, tested the fragile beginnings of something new. Rumors started quietly. People talked. They always did. A widowed man spending time at a cafe. A young woman working there. Assumptions formed quickly, often without kindness. Zymel heard them first. And like always, she stepped back, not out of fear, not out of shame, but out of habit. A lifetime of believing she shouldn't take up space where she didn't belong. So she created distance. Fewer smiles, shorter conversations, careful avoidance. Our eyes noticed immediately. And this time, he didn't stay silent. He waited until one quiet afternoon when the cafe was nearly empty, when sunlight again painted soft patterns across the floor, when the world felt still enough for honesty. He didn't say much. He never did. But what he said mattered. He told her that not everything people say deserves to be believed, that sometimes the loudest voices are the least truthful, and that seeing someone truly seeing them is rare. And he told her that he saw her, not as someone standing behind anyone else, not as someone lesser, but exactly as she was. And for Zymel, that moment felt like something breaking and healing at the same time, because all her life she had been compared, but for the first time she was being understood. From there, things didn't magically become perfect. Healing never works that way. There were still doubts, still moments of hesitation, still days when old insecurities returned. But there was also something new. Hope. Slow, quiet, steady hope. Our eyes didn't rush anything. He had learned the hard way that real connections take time. And Zymel, for the first time in her life, allowed herself to take up space. Not loudly, not boldly, but honestly. Even Hani had changed. Not dramatically, not overnight. But she began to see her sister differently, not as someone in her shadow, but as someone who had always been quietly strong in ways she had never noticed. Sometimes it takes someone from the outside to reveal what's been there all along. And Meher, in her simple, beautiful way, became the bridge between them all. She laughed freely, loved openly, and reminded everyone that life, despite its losses, still had room for warmth. As seasons shifted and days grew brighter, our eyes realized something he hadn't expected. He wasn't just moving forward. He was living again. And Zymel, standing beside him, not in anyone's shadow, not in comparison to anyone else, was part of that life, not because she was the prettiest, but because she was real, because she was kind, because she was enough. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the quiet ways people matter, don't scroll away just yet. Take a moment to like, comment, and share. It truly helps stories like this reach someone who might need it today. And before you go, here's something special. Comment the word "seen" if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever believed you weren't enough, or if you're still learning to see your own worth. Because sometimes all it takes is one person to look at you and say the truth you've needed to hear all along. And sometimes that truth changes everything.